Alright, let's enter into ecology. To kind of just give you a brief idea of science and ecology and how things change and evolve over time, I'm going to tell you a quick story about the deep sea vents. So, scientists make observations of the natural world, and from those observations, we come up with hypotheses to explain what we're seeing. And so back in the 1900s, there was a hypothesis that down here in the midnight zone, or the abyssal zone, that there was no life in the deep seas. This is based on the observation that up here higher, we see photosynthetic organisms, right, that are the basis of the food chains. And so it is these organisms that take that light and make food from it that everything else branches off of and grows off of. So those are the producers, and then all the consumers you have feeding from there. Now, like in this abyssal zone, there's no light, there's no photosynthetic organisms, there's no life, because life can't exist down here, because there's nothing for it to eat. Well, then we started doing deep water dredging, or deep sea dredging, where you drag these big scoops on the bottom of the ocean floor and then bring up stuff, like metals and things like that. And it turns out there is life down there. And they're like, okay, so if there's life down there, what is it eating? So they came up with a new hypothesis. This is the marine snow hypothesis. So as things die and decay, it drops down through the layers, and it looks like snow. And so they came up with the idea that it was these particles, this marine snow, that life was feeding from. Also, anytime like a large whale carcass or something would die, you'd be like, okay, so it is like these big animal deaths and this really small animal deaths, these microscopic marine snow, is what's driving life down in these really dark places where there's no photosynthesis. Well, we got new tools, these deep sea submersibles. They're like, well, let's just go down there and see what there is, right? And so they went down and found diversity rivaling coral reefs around these deep sea vents. So we're talking like tons of species, and they're like, what? How is that possible? Well, it turns out that in these tube worms, there are bacteria that can take the sulfur that is coming up from these deep sea vents and use it to make energy. And so you have this mutualistic relationship between the tube worm and its bacteria, and everything else is feeding from the energy that these tube worms are making. And so all this chemical synthesis of making energy is now going and feeding this ecosystem, which is just super cool, right? And so, as science is always changing. We make our observation, we come up with a hypothesis. That hypothesis might hang around for a really long time, and we're like, this is how it is. And then something shows up later, it's like, nope. And science is like, okay, so let's think about it. How else could it be like this? And so the neat thing about science is it's never static. It's always changing. The more we learn, the more we can apply to other areas and just grow the knowledge. It's really cool. And we get to learn about it in this class.